What's up, guys? It's Deandra.
And Paige.
Welcome to Elm Street Radio this week. Pretty cool episode. I have been listening to a lot of random horror podcasts, and one of them was like the top 5 favorite Freddy kills. And I guess it's kind of a generic topic to list your favorite kills. So I thought, what if we do something a little bit different from that and kind of focus on the top not typical Freddy kills that Paige and I kind of come up with. So we're just going to we have our little lists and we'll go over them. Earlier today, we posted on Elm Street Radio the question, what are your top 5 favorite Freddy kills? And we pretty much, the lists across the board, there were some kind of mixed in, but there are a lot of consistencies. And so we're going to eliminate those. And they're actually not 5, there are 7, because there are a couple that are pretty interchangeable. And so to make it kind of more difficult on us. Okay, Paige. So I would definitely say Tina is on the list of the ones to eliminate.
Yes, Tina's on the list to eliminate. I feel like that's everyone's favorite kill.
Yeah.
And I have to say, out of all of like the franchise, like out of all of the kills, there are 2 deaths that are really hard for me to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And most people think like, oh, it's Nancy Thompson. But Tina's death is probably the hardest thing for me to watch.
Yeah,
because
same.
we know Amanda, so it's like watching your friend get murdered, and it's acted so beautifully well. Like, you believe she's getting murdered. So
yeah,
I it's the hardest one for me to watch. But yes, let's take that off the list.
it is my favorite kill in the whole franchise because it's so beautiful and raw, and it's like just dragged out. I mean, no pun intended, dragged out, and you just see her screaming in the blood, and then there's Rod, who's this tough guy, and he's screaming. I mean, it's just like one of those really gut-wrenching scenes. So totally. Okay, so no Tina is in this list today because it's always on lists. The next one I have is Glenn, because that bloodbath fountain scene is so incredible, and I know a lot of people in the poll mentioned Glenn.
I'm okay with taking Glenn's death off the list. You know what's
Cool.
kind of funny is when you and I were compiling our own list for this episode, I didn't even think of Glenn's death as one of my favorites.
Oh, really?
That's so weird. That's so random, but I just didn't even think of it.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe because the other deaths are so iconic.
But that blood scene when the blood is spewing out of the bed and onto the ceiling, and then when when that room is rotating accidentally, and like when the blood went all over and everybody almost got electrocuted, and it just kind of, but in the scene you don't know that. It just looks like it's kind of moving across the ceiling in one way, but that's what happened. It's really freaking creepy, and I always wondered what happened to Glenn after that. I know there was the deleted scene when he kind of rose out of the bed and just flopped down, but with all that blood, I swear he must have been blended, so I really don't think that would have happened. I kind of like that we don't know what happened to Glenn. So Glenn is off the list, and the next one is Jennifer. Welcome to Primetime, Bitch. Everybody loves that. So
everyone just loves that. I think that it's so hard to say because like these are all such iconic deaths, but I really feel like of all the deaths, that is the most iconic death because everybody references "Welcome to Primetime, Bitch."
Primetime, Bitch. Yeah.
So, yeah. Gotta come off the list.
And everybody loves Dream Warriors, so everybody's mostly seen that. Yeah, everybody loves Welcome to Primetime. So those are, at least for me, from what I've seen consistently, Tina, Glenn, and Jennifer are always on the list towards the top. So bye-bye Tina, Glenn, and Jennifer. And then the next 4 actually are kind of interchangeable. So for the next spot, I have Taryn and Philip gone.
That's so hard for me because Taryn was on my list.
I know, because everybody loves the Taryn. Everybody loves Taryn. And Philip, they're always on there.
So Taryn is the other one that I was talking about that's incredibly hard for me to watch because it's just so sad. And I don't know if I've ever really talked about it. I might have talked about it like a year or so ago, but Taryn's death is one of the hardest for me to watch because her story has such a progression in Dream Warriors, and you really feel bad for her. Like, you really feel like she came from the wrong side of the tracks. She had a horrible life. She was using drugs to cope with Freddy.
And now she's kind of overcome it, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then at the end, she succumbs to it because Freddy injects her with it. It just is so sad. And Jennifer, again, is such an amazing actress that the fear in her eyes when she's crying and the sadness, like, oh, I'm so sad this is off the list.
I know. I'm sorry. And Philip, too. Philip is one of the deaths that's hard for me to watch because sometimes when I watch horror movies, I have like an empathetic approach. And so I watch it and I like picture myself getting cut and my tendons coming out of my arms and my legs. And I watch it like when he's walking and like it's the shot of his feet and there's like the little blood splatters. I mean, that is just so shocking. And it just, I could just feel it in my body. So that's one that's hard for me to watch. So those two are also coming off. And I guess so technically that would be our 5. But because there's the interchangeable nature of these, and to make it a little more difficult on us, the next 2 are actually, it's funny, I grouped these all with the same movies, are Debbie and Sheila. So Wanna Suck Face and the Cockroach.
Oh.
Yeah.
Debbie's is another iconic death that is just so cool. Like, it's so cool to watch. Like, that's the one that like you cheer on because she's dying because it's a really cool death. But I just needs to come off the list.
Yep. Yeah, and I love Toy and Brooke, but they're so cool, and I just unfortunately we have to take them off. So now we've got no Tina, no Glenn, no Jennifer, no Taryn or Philip, and no Debbie or Sheila. So this is going to be pretty tough on us, but I have faith that we can come up with a darn cool list. All right, so now we're going to break down our list, but we're going to start at our number 5 kill.
All right. But you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah. Although this kind of might be a little cheating because there are a couple deaths on there that sometimes make the top 5 lists for people, and my number 1 is one of those deaths. But it's not as popular on the list all the time as the other ones. Sometimes, but I digress. All right, so your number 5 is...
My number 5 is Grady from part 2.
Oh, really? So tell me why that's number 5 and what is like your reaction?
So I would have to say it's not just his death. It's the whole scene, where Jesse is having Freddy come out of him. And, the fear in Grady's eyes as he's screaming for his dad. He's, like, banging on it. It just is a really, like, terrifying scene to me. Because Nightmare 2 is, to me, the scariest of all the films. And so it's just a terrifying thing that he's in there with his friend. And he's, like, telling his friend, like, why aren't you there getting laid with your girlfriend? Instead, you're here shacking up with me. And he's like, he's inside me. And then when he comes, it's like you're hoping and rooting for Grady because he's the comic relief, and then when he dies and those knives go through the door, it's just so cool.
Yeah, I will actually have more on that one later on because that one's a little bit higher on my list. But my number 5, because it is, to me, this is an awesome death, but it's one of those moments that makes me really sad and it freaks me out because I think when this person is dying, they look terrifying. So I put it a little bit lower on the list, even though realistically it should probably be a little higher. But that's Dan's death from part 5. It breaks my heart. Breaks my heart for Alice to lose Dan. Because Dan is just such a genuinely good guy. But when Freddy comes in, and I know he's a little silly in that part, but he is... What he does to Dan is so gruesome. I mean, he just becomes this almost Mad Max kind of character, and it looks like an extremely painful death, but at the same time, it's really awesome. And so I have to put Dan's death as my number 5 pick on the list.
So that's very interesting because Dan is my number 4.
Really?
And so I
Okay.
agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you on your points, because it's just incredibly sad, and knowing Alice's story arc,
Yes.
it's horrible. You know, when she's getting that coffee and all of a sudden it goes behind her and she's like
Mm-hmm.
screaming like, Dan, and he's like, save
Yeah.
me. Like, it just, there's nothing she can do because her whole world around her is falling apart.
I
And
know.
his death, like, is so gnarly. Like, the unedited footage, like
Oh
the
yeah.
stuff that didn't make the film, is so gnarly. It's just so good. But it
Yeah.
definitely is not my favorite, but it's top 5 for sure.
Yeah, it's got a gruesome death. It's definitely towards the end, like I said, because of kind of my reaction to it. Because even though I'm a horror fan, it still really is one of those ones that it's difficult for me to watch, kind of like Philip. But I don't have as much of an empathetic approach to it. So my number 4 is Will from Dream Warriors. I love,
Oh.
I know, because he's so cute, which is weird because I put his death on the list. I'm sorry, Will. Um, I I really like Freddie's Freddie's nod to Aerosmith. So that's why it partially makes the list. Also, it's another one of those really cruel things, because that's what Freddy does.
Yeah.
He takes your weaknesses, especially in Dream Warriors, and he really uses it against people, kind of like either what was their escape or what is their escape, and he uses it against them. And so making fun of Will for the fact that he can walk is
Hmm.
really such a, pardon me, but a dick move.
It
And
is.
he is talking about, putting him in this chair, and it looks extremely painful, and poor Will is just trying to get by it. And he's got this dream power, and he is so confident in the delivery of his line, like demon be gone. And then when Freddy comes up and grabs him and lifts him up, it's like, oh, sorry, dude, you had like no shot. And I also love the story behind it with Ira for the fact that he had that wooden plank like on him, and he was like, God,
Yes.
I hope
Two by
Robert
four.
makes it on my chest and he doesn't miss. I like that story with it, but I love Will as a character, and I love just that moment, like he's this wizard master, and being a geek myself, it's one of those moments when you're like, yeah, he's like a superhero in the dreams. And
Yeah.
it's so sad, what happens to him, but it is one of those, in my opinion, iconic deaths, like so many in the Nightmare franchise, which is why there were so many that were eliminated. And I would have probably eliminated more, but then we wouldn't really have had much to go off of. So
Right.
number 4, yeah, for me is Will.
Will is actually, I'm not going to say what number, but Will is higher up on the list for me for a lot of the
Ah,
same reasons, but I'll go more into it once we get to that number.
all right.
What
So what's your number 3?
My number 3 is Christian Parker.
Oh man, and I know you love Kristen, so I'm
Oh,
curious to hear this.
so I put her death as number 3 because I do believe that she had to die. And
Go
as
on.
much as I love her character, as much as I love, Patricia's performance and Tuesday's performance, and I always view them as two separate characters, because they were two separate films. And Tuesday's performance, she was a little more jaded now. She had been through more stuff, and so she was a little more harsher on herself. But her death, a lot of people feel like she was unceremoniously killed off, but I loved it. I loved her sinking into the sand, into the house, showing off her gymnastic skills. I love that she went up against Freddy, the "we beat you before." And I love that, like, he says that famous line that I love so dear, where he's like, Elm Street's last brat, farewell. The whole thing I
Yeah.
love. And when he throws her in the fire, and he transfers, she transfers the power through Freddy into Alice. It's just such an amazing thing. And then I love later on in the film when they show her burned, you know? It just it's one of my favorites. And as much as I love Kristen, it's definitely one of my favorite deaths.
It's one of those
What's
things that kind of reminds me of like in Batman when they say you either die a hero or you've lived long enough to see yourself become the villain. It's kind of like you have to die and or you overstay your welcome. Like for me, when Nancy
Yes.
dies, as much as I mean this this did not make my list at all, of course. I'd like to forget it.
Nancy
But
dies? Wait, what?
what? Yeah,
I
that
I
when she
didn't
says it's
know
over,
this.
it's over. But you know, it's one of those things like if you stay too long, the character will become, I guess, a little bit tiresome, and so you have to find an endpoint. But I have my thoughts on Nancy's death, and I know we both do. I mean, for one, I think it was good for her to die, but it was a missed opportunity in not mentioning her again in the movies, but keeping it for the comic books, which are freaking awesome. But in any case, that's not part of this discussion. But I've always been one of the people that felt like Kristen was killed off too early in part four, but I guess it's the nice transition to Atlas. But it's also really interesting in reading some of the synopsises for part four because sometimes they'll say something about, you know, Kristen Parker goes up against Freddy again, but the main heroine in the movie becomes Alice, and it's not Kristen. Kristen passes along her power to Alice, but Kristen really isn't always prevalent throughout the movie. I mean, she is in little bits here and there, but after a certain point, Alice pretty much takes over. But I did feel like she was killed off a little early, unless it
You
was
know,
just the way
I
to do
think
it.
it was early. I do agree that it could have gone out a little bit more, but I love how she went down with a fight. I feel like, and I know we're
Yeah.
not talking about Nancy, but I feel like that's the one thing that I wish they would have done with Nancy, because Nancy, Kristen, and Alice are such heroic characters. The
Yeah.
characters themselves have been in two each films. If you think about it, Nancy was in two, Kristen was in two, Alice was in two. And so for me, like, I feel like her death, like, she went down literally in a blaze of glory. And that's what I just love about it. Yeah, I wish it was a little bit later in the film, but it just it's just as perfect to me. It's just fitting that she went out battling against Freddy.
Yeah. Yeah, she definitely put up a fight, and that is such a great death when she says no and Freddy comes and he pushes her in the sand and he's got the sunglasses on. I love it. I do love it. Actually, that death did not make my list because I feel like I don't know, it was an epic death, but I wish there would have been more. I don't know. I just wasn't.
What's your number three?
Well, my number three is actually totally weirdly out there. And this, I guess I was just trying to be quirky and think of something that maybe nobody else had thought of. But it was, it was actually the one of the pool guys from part two.
Oh my
Uh,
god.
like when Freddy, okay, so this is like a tie for me because they're not actually well developed characters. So I'm gonna have two here. So I have the one guy that Freddy like jams his claw into his stomach, and he's like, "Ugh!" And he like grabs his shirt and his guts spill out. Love it.
Yeah.
And the other one is when Freddy slashes the guy across the face, and the guy falls, and you see the slash marks on his face. I love that. I love both of those. I think they're grisly and brutal, but very, very quick. And so I put those on there. They're totally out there,
Do you
but I
feel
was trying to
like
be creative.
that feel like that kind of also shows a little bit of Freddy's nature, with the fact that, like, he's not just stalking all these kids. He really
Mm-hmm.
is like a demented serial killer. Like, if you get in my way, I don't care who you are, I'm gonna fucking slash you.
Yeah.
Like when he's like, "It's okay, man. We can help you. Do you need anything?" And he's like,
Help your
"Get out of the way,
oh
fucker."
fucker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's that's why you know, we both think that Freddy is super dark in the second one, and he really is. I mean, that pool scene really shows how much of an evil bastard he is, just going out and he's like, I might be in the real world, but I can still get you, and he's just going around just slashing everybody across the face, and I love it because I love that whole pool scene. I think it's totally, totally brutal. Like people are falling into the fires, and it's just an awesome scene. But those two in particular, the guy just screaming because he's just been gutted, and the other guy just gets it across the face. I mean, Freddy whips his arm across that guy's face, and he takes him out. And those are just two of the standout deaths in the series for me. It's totally random, totally out there, but I think those deaths are really, really cool. Really, really
But
cool.
I love it. I love that those are two deaths that you thought of because honestly, nobody
Yeah.
ever thinks of that. When I was like researching my list, like I was thinking like I'm like I really like Grady's death a lot. I was like, but there wasn't really too many deaths in, Nightmare 2. But then I was like, well, there's the pool scene. But I
Yeah.
wasn't even thinking the way that like your thought process was. And I love that because it does really just show how he just is evil.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that it's a different kind of death for Freddy because usually Freddy's pretty creative, but this is very straightforward in using his glove, that weapon that when Wes had intended for it to be a glove and not like a single blade of sorts. It was that very basic prehistoric weapon that animals had that humans were afraid of, and Freddy finally really gets to use his glove just as it is without getting too fancy with it, just slashing and stabbing, and that's why I really like some of those deaths. But so number two, now we're getting to the very top of our lists. Who is your number two?
My number 2 is Kincaid from
Me
Dream
too.
Master.
Me
Get
too.
out! Oh,
Ding
okay, so
ding.
that's exciting. I love that his death essentially opens the film and brings Freddy
Mm-hmm.
back to life. I love that he's another one who kind of goes up against Freddy. And, I love anytime Freddy kills somebody that he has a history with, and that we've seen on screen before go up against him. And so his death was, and all the Dream Warriors deaths to me are sad because we love the characters so much. But Kincaid's death is, I love it. I love the junkyard scene. I love, when the lights are going and it zooms out and he screams for Kristen and, because they didn't believe her. And then now he realizes that she was telling the truth, that, he's back. And it's just amazing. What are your reasons for it?
I love Kincaid as a character. I think he is one of those really honest, really relatable characters in the Nightmare franchise, like they all are. But there's just something about Kincaid that is so unique and special. Even though he
Right.
dies first in number four, he is very much, made him a well rounded character. And I think that seeing him being able to use his sass, first of all, also resurrection via fiery dog pee by a dog whose name is Jason is awesome.
Yes.
I think I was watching, was it, I think it was, oh, I almost said Alone in the Dark. Maybe it was Alone in the Dark. And basically, the the name of the dog in it was his name was Jason, or not Jason. It wasn't his name wasn't Jason. I think it was the same dog that was Jason in part four, but I never looked into it. I'm pretty sure that that's the same dog, and so I saw it, and it was really cool to see that. Yeah, it was.
It like instantly makes you like think of
Yeah.
like Nightmare 4. Like I love when I see like in horror films like those little pops of things that are so iconic to Nightmare
Mm-hmm.
that like it makes you like, oh, okay,
Oh,
like that was totally thought of. That
yeah.
was
Oh,
totally a
I know what it
homage.
is. It was The Hidden. So it was Jack Shoulder's movie, The Hidden, and the dog in it, which
Oh,
totally makes sense because it was New Line Cinema. They
right.
probably used the same dog. But yeah, love the resurrection of Freddy via dog pee, which is so terribly Freddy because it's raunchy and out there and wild. And then he's just chasing Kincaid around. And I don't know why, growing up, I thought Freddy was so sexy moving through that junkyard. Pardon me. Anybody who's out there who's like, what the frick is wrong with you? I thought Freddy, I mean, Freddy is very sexy in the ways that he moves. Like in that pool scene when he's walking into the trellis where there's, and then he walks into the fire, that hip first movement that he has, very sexy. Same thing that he
It's a
does it in
very
part 4.
seductive. It's a
It is.
seductive
It's
movement, and
almost
I think
like vampires. You know how they like
yes,
seduce their victims. Now I don't think any of the women necessarily had a thing for Freddy, but it also kind of reminds me of that that sexual murderous connection.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I
I
love
love it.
Kincaid, and then I love it when he says, "I'll see you in hell," and then Freddie says, "Tell him Freddie sent ya." I love that. I love
Even
it so much.
the music cues are so good, like the xylophone, like playing the Nightmare
Uh-huh.
tune when it like comes up off of his shadow,
Yes. Yes.
and I can hear Kincaid's voice in my head right now, like freaking out that like Freddie is
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, woohoo! Take that,
Yes,
motherfucker! I love it. I mean,
he has the
that's
best
a fun
lines.
scene. He does. He does. I feel like when I'm in my low points, I need to become Kincaid. Be Kincaid. Yeah, I love Kincaid. So that's my number 2, and that's your number 2, which is awesome. So glad we have that on the list. Okay, now it's time for number 1, and I'm guessing who your number
Please,
1 is. All right, go ahead. Drum roll, please.
drum roll, please. My number 1 is Will. His death has always been my favorite death in the series. Will is
Really?
one of my yeah, he's Will
Oh,
is one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. Um, I just love the character of Will. I don't know what it is. I think it's you hit it on the head earlier. Like he's a nerd, and like I feel like growing up I was a super nerd, and I feel like that's why I loved like Will and Sheila because like they were both like the nerdy characters. But his death to me growing up was always the most haunting death because when I first watched it I was little obviously and seeing him in that dark corridor and Freddy's voice gets super bassed and the wheelchair spins around and he says when you wake up it's back in the saddle again and it just is like chilling. Every time I watch it, and I watch Dream Warriors very often. I will admit that I watch it very often. It still sends chills through me. And then again, it's incredibly sad because you think that he is beating him. The original Harry Potter is going up
yeah.
against Freddy Krueger,
That's right. That's right.
and
The original.
then he dies. And I think most of the deaths in Dream Warriors are, to me, incredibly sad
They
because
are.
they just die and then you never see them again. You never get to hear from them again.
Mm-mm.
Like at least with like Nancy coming into Dream Warriors, she at least references, 6 years ago he killed my friends. He almost killed me.
Yeah.
But the Dream Warriors are just, they die and that's it.
Yeah. It is. They are really sad. And like I said earlier, I mean, because they're all there. They've all faced Freddy, and they all have people who don't believe them, who think they're crazy, who are trying to change them, and they know for a fact that they are being tortured by this guy, and he will kill them. No one is going to help them, and they're stuck in this place with these people who are going to ensure pretty much that they die, even though they think they're
Mm-hmm.
helping them. And that's why Nancy is such a savior there. And they have these dream powers that might have helped them, or it's this relief. I mean, yeah, for Will, not being able to walk and then being able to go to sleep and being able to have that ability to walk, something he can't do in the waking world. But at the same time, he really can't enjoy it because he's being haunted by Freddy. And it's one of those sad moments.
It's so sad because, like, even in their group, their first group where Kristen pulls them in, and he says, "In my dreams, my legs are strong," and he goes, and I just love it, like because he realizes what he did. He jumped, and he's the cause of his paralyzation. But to him, in his dreams, everybody has all these wonderful, fantastic things. And yes, he's the wizard master, but in his dreams, his dream is for his legs to be strong again.
Yeah.
And then Freddy rips it away from him. It's just so sad, but it's an amazing death.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to drum roll yours, and we're going to see who your number one.
Well, because I mentioned that it was, I mentioned that this reminded me of Christmas Vacation. I mentioned it earlier, but my number one, I mean, this one is one that is sometimes mentioned pretty frequently, but not as frequently as the ones that we eliminated. But it is Grady. I think that moment is so terrifying and painful to watch. So first of all, we have Freddy ripping out of Jesse, Grady's best friend, and Grady has to watch this happen to his friend. It's like a what the fuck moment. I mean, his friend is just, there's this thing coming out of his friend, and then it emerges and just stares at him with this sinister look, and Grady's like, oh my God, what is that thing? And then he's screaming for his dad, and then Freddy just digs the claws so deep into him, and he just brings it down his body, and the blood is just coming out the other side as Grady's parents are watching this happen. And Grady sinks to the floor, and Jesse is standing there covered in blood with Freddy mocking him. And I mean, Jesse has no control over what happened because Freddy took over his body and killed his best friend, somebody that he was able to confide in. And rips it from him. I mean, it's one of those painful, it's another one of those moments when I put myself in Grady's place because of the way that it's shot, with the glove coming down, with watching Grady like kind of shake as it happens in pain, but he can't really do anything about it. It's just overwhelming to him, and the blood coming out of his mouth. It's a sinister moment on Freddy's part. It is a tragic moment for Jesse, and it is a gruesome moment and a gruesome end for Grady. So that's why I've put him at the top of my list. And even on my general top 5 favorite deaths, including deaths like Tina, which is my number 1, I will still put Grady number 2.
That's so good. It's so sad. Like, just even you describing it again, like, it's just so much better than what I described, because now I'm even thinking, like, when Jesse screams out of sadness, he's screaming because Freddy just made him kill his best friend, and Freddy's looking in the mirror after it shatters, and he's laughing and taunting him like, I did this to you.
Yeah.
And you have no control. I'm going to continue doing this to you.
And Jesse went to him for help.
Yeah.
And because he was there, because he went to his friend for help, he lost his friend. And that's another layer of something that's so tragic that I think happens a lot in these Elm Street movies is, you have these friends and you want to be normal, but sometimes by association you die because that's that link that Freddy needs to get to you, whether it's in proximity or like Kristen calling in Alice, even though she doesn't die, just, passing the torch along to kids who are not one of the Elm Street brats. And it's one of those things that happens a lot in the nightmare movies. So those are our top 5 non-traditional Freddy kills.
I'm interested to see what our listeners think. I would love to see some of the comments, and I'm interested to see what they think of our lists and our take. And I kind of think that we should challenge them to list their non-traditional kills. Like, what's their top 5 non-traditional?
Yeah. Think a little bit outside the box. So there's also like Greta that we didn't mention, or Mark from part 5, or even like, oh God, there are just so many, like John Doe from part 6.
Oh.
I mean, Joey in part 4.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff that
I know
Rick
gets a lot of of flack, but I feel like Rick's death should be an honorable mention
It is an honorable
because
mention.
just because of how much we love Andras. But I really, even Rick's death, like I feel like Rick's death was pretty cool. A lot of people are like, oh well, Freddy couldn't even show up to his death. But like to me,
That's
like
the advantage of being Freddy Krueger. You don't have to like
right.
make yourself appear. You can't make the rules. Freddy does.
Exactly. And it's almost scarier if Freddy's not there and he's
Yeah.
fighting this unseeable force. But I will tell you, of all of the characters, aside from Nancy, of all of the characters, Rick is the one that I didn't want to die. Like, I
Really?
wish that, like, he wouldn't have died. Like, everybody else, I was like, oh, their death, like, it kind of serves a purpose. I understand, it's a horror movie. They got to die. But for me, it was like, why does Rick got to die? Like, he was such a good brother to Alice, and just seeing their relationship on screen, it just was so, I don't know. I don't know if maybe because like, like I have a god brother who I call my brother. So I don't know if like maybe it's like I have that brother sister
Yeah.
relationship with somebody, and I just feel like if my brother was to die, like it's just so sad. So
Yeah.
he was the one that I didn't want to die the most.
Yeah, and I know we talked about this with Andras, but he's just one of those and another one of those genuinely good guys in the Nightmare franchise that's protective of his sister and his girlfriend, and he cares about his friends. And so it is hard to see Rick die. Another one that we didn't mention is actually Robert Englund's favorite kill, which is Carlos.
Oh yes.
Yeah, but I kind of eliminated that one because if Robert Englund has that as his favorite kill, I mean, I mean
Yeah.
that kind of is unfair. But yeah, Carlos, and then I always laugh at Spencer. I always love the boing 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 boing, and the Inagata Devita by Iron Butterfly. Love it.
Yes.
I love. I think that's such a fun death, funny to
Yeah.
quote. I love it. There are a lot of
My
really good deaths in the Nightmare franchise.
my favorite scene in Freddy's Dead is, I'm laughing right now. I don't even know if I can get it out. Is where when they're in the house and Spencer's doing all those funny things, and he's like, "I gotta get in there and save him," and he's like, "This isn't normal. This isn't
Yeah.
normal." And like Spencer's like head goes through the ceiling or something. He goes, "You call that normal?"
Yeah.
Like I die laughing every time
I
I
love it
see
when
that
Tracy
scene.
kicks Freddy in the balls. I like that moment.
I love Freddy's Dead. I think it's my least watched. Well, it's my most watched one, my least favorite, but I still love it because I think as a standalone, it's just so funny. Like it just really is a funny film. And there's scary parts in that film too, like with the tickets thing
Oh,
with
yeah, Bob
Bob
Shay,
Shay. Ooh, that is so
the
scary.
unsung hero of acting.
Yes. You know what? If they should have like at least killed off Bob Shay at least in one of
Oh,
the films.
I know. It's so
Like
tragic.
that would have, yeah, that would have been my thing. I would have been like, I don't want to play a role. I want somebody to kill me
Yeah,
in
murder
one of
me,
the
please.
films.
Cover me in blood.
Yes,
Yeah, for sure.
that's awesome.
So, in conclusion, guys, there are a lot of really freaking awesome deaths in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and it's kind of hard to tell. So, let us know in the comments what your favorite top five favorite deaths are that are not typically on in the top five. So even maybe you have your own list of something that might be in the top five, or even going off of what we eliminated, our top seven deaths that we eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of go beyond that and let us know what some of your favorites are. And if you like this video or any of our other videos, make sure you thumb them up. If you're on iTunes, give us the 5 stars. And if you don't like what we have, just move along. Other things happen in life that are worth your time. Don't worry, you don't need to comment or thumb us down. But thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate it. And so, Paige, what's happening this weekend? What are we doing? Do we want to share that?
Yeah. So this
Yes.
weekend we are traveling to Charlotte, North Carolina, and we're going to hang out. We're going to hang out with some of our friends. We're gonna maybe film some interviews. We're gonna go see the Dream Warriors cast, which I'm super excited for. But I'm more excited because I get to have a road trip with my two best friends, and so we're going to Charlotte, North Carolina. We're going to Days of the Dead, Charlotte, for their first show, and I'm excited. Are you excited?
I am so jazzed. Because, first of all, I always love going with you guys, and I always love going to conventions. So I just know that, and you guys know this isn't live. So tomorrow is my last day of work before we leave, and I know that I'm not going to be able to concentrate because I don't know about you, and I don't know about anybody else, but I get the pre-con like excitement, like that's all I can think
Oh
about
yeah,
because it's that like transition. And I've mentioned it before, but going from like your normal life into con life because you have it's so different. First of all, I mean, you have people that you relate to, and then also you like live this so in real life you're Bruce Wayne and then you become Batman and
yeah,
more awesome. And so it's like this tunnel that I go into, and it's just I transform into this other version of myself that's, truly, I think, more like who I really am and that we don't show on a daily basis. And I think we mentioned this in the episode when you and I interviewed each other. I mean, we're just more ourselves and we know each other truly as our true selves more so than even the people who are close to us in our personal life that aren't
right.
really into horror. But yeah, there's like that transition going from regular life to horror life that happens, and so I'm really looking forward to it. And plus there's the Dream Warriors cast there and a lot of people we haven't even met yet,
I
even meeting
know.
Ira for the first time face to face because I know we talked to him, and but being able to see him in person I'm excited for, and he made our lists, so
I
there you
know. I'm
go.
super excited to see them, and I'm really excited, like, because Elm Street Radio is growing so much, and along with Fred Heads, the documentary, they're both growing so much. I'm excited to like to see you guys, like our listeners, and come up to us and say hi and let us know, like, if you see us out there. I mean, I know that we're gonna have some swag that we're gonna be carrying around just because every convention we go to, we have like fun stuff that we just like to give people. Like, we're like,
Hmm.
hey, you're a Freddy fan. Here, have some glasses, or have a button, or have a pin. So
Yeah.
come up to us, and if we have something, we'll give it to you guys.
Yeah, and if you have recommendations for episodes or something like that, we're always open to it because we're just fellow fans like you guys, and there's so much to
Yeah,
talk about with A Nightmare on Elm Street. So if there's something you want to hear, let us know. We'd love to explore it. I know Paige and I each have our own lists of subjects that we want to talk about. But if you don't see us at in Charlotte, because we'll get there a little bit later on Saturday, and we'll
a
be
little
there
later.
a little smidgen later, a little bit later on Saturday, and then we'll be there Sunday. Um, so we'll be around. But
Yeah.
if you don't catch us, we will also be. Do we want to mention where else we're going to be, or is it kind of top secret right now?
Uh, so it's a little top secret right now,
Okay,
but
but we'll be
let's
around.
let's we'll be around, but we'll definitely be at more conventions this
Yes.
year. I think that just not just for the projects that we're working on, but I think just in general, we love being at conventions so much because, as Deandra said, like, we're with our people, like we're with the people that just
Mm-hmm.
get us. And sometimes, like, life gets hectic and things happen and we don't get to go and do all these fun things anymore. And I think that we just really
Yeah.
made it a commitment that this year we want to really throw ourselves back into that. and
Yeah.
and so we can't reveal the big surprise yet, but I'm hoping soon that we'll be able to reveal the big one.
We I think may have talked to you about this, but I felt like over the last couple of years or so, I mean, for a few years there, I was going to as many conventions as I could possibly go to, several a year. And then I was going to maybe one or two a year, and I kept feeling like, I'm missing something. I'm missing that convention. And conventions can be expensive. I mean, they can really, really, really be expensive between the hotels and the food and the travel and whomever you want to meet and the entry to the convention. So it's understandable if people want to do other things, or maybe just other things are happening in life that they can't always make it. But when you go to a convention, and if you're out there and you've never been to one, you should definitely try to get to one. But I will warn you that they can be addicting because you're there with your fellow fans, and you get to see all these other people that just understand you, and you can make friends in the snap of a finger. And it's nice that this year we're actually getting to go to a lot of conventions and just experience this over and over again, whether, I mean, projects or not, just being able to do it. It's so much fun, and it brings back a lot of memories, especially in the summertime, because that's when I did my very first convention back in 2011. And now we get to to keep doing what we love to do, and there's nothing more exciting to me in life than doing what you love to do with the people that matter and that understand you and that you get along with as yourself, because that's really the most important thing in life, is to live it and to be around people that are worth your time. So yeah, I'm really really excited. So
I think that's great. And I think with that, I think there's no better way to end this episode
yep,
with that, with what you said. It
yep.
just sums it all up.
But I do have one request. Give me your favorite line from one of the deaths, and then I will end with that, and that'll kind of be the
Oh,
end. Yes. So give me. I think I know maybe what you might pick, but I might be wrong. So I want to find out what you're gonna pick.
so my favorite line from one of the deaths is not from my favorite death, but my favorite line from one of the deaths is definitely Kristen's, where she says, "We beat you before," and he says, "Now you're all alone. Come on, Kristen, reach out and cut someone." That's my favorite line. What's yours?
And mine is Kincaid and Freddy. I'll see you in hell. Tell him Freddy sent ya. I love it. I love it so much. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you around. Um, cool.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, guys.